Half-Life 3 is undeniably one of the most anticipated games of all time, as well as having one of the most interesting development histories in all of gaming. We have got a lot to talk about today, so without any further ado, let's jump into the timeline, starting with pre-2005. Full disclosure, I will not be including anything about the HLX leaks that have been happening recently due to the fact that we don't really actually know what it is. It may just be another prequel like Half-Life Alyx or some other spin-off. Pre-2005. On June 28, 1999, a website domain named halflife3.com was registered alongside halflife2.com. It would redirect to the official Half-Life website until the rights ran out in early 2014. 4 years later, on June 13, 2003, right after the announcement of Half-Life 2, the Half-Life modding team Trepid asked Gabe Newell if Half-Life 3 was soon to follow, in which he answered with a simple no. 2005. When Half-Life 2 Episode 1 was revealed in 2005, Valve had also announced that it would be the first installment in an episodic trilogy of games that would continue the story of Half-Life 2. Episode 1 was also originally named Aftermath. Surprisingly, the first concept art of Episode 3 by Valve artist Gautam Babar was created on August 5th, showing the Borealis in the Arctic. This was followed by another piece on the 17th, however, these would not be seen by the public for almost 20 years until the release of the Half-Life 2 20th anniversary documentary in 2024. 2006. In May of 2006, Episode 3 was announced to have a release date around Christmas of 2007. It was also stated by Valve that the plan was to release a new episode every 6 to 8 months, with each taking between 4 to 6 hours to complete. The way that they had planned on achieving this release rate was to have two teams working on the episodes. Team A would be assigned Episode 1 and Team B with Episode 2. Once Team A completed Episode 1, they would immediately start work on Episode 3. It had also been mentioned that Episode 4 would be developed outside of Valve, similar to the games that were made by Gearbox using the original Half-Life engine. Without any delays, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 finally released on June 1st, aligning with the timeline given in May. This would set a precedent that was not completely followed, if you couldn't tell. After the release of Episode 1, Gabe Newell himself had referred to the Half-Life 2 episodes as Half-Life 3, announcing that Episode 2 would release in Q4 of 2006, followed by Episode 3 in 2007. He had also said that all of the stories for these episodes were all worked out. It was said that they would take a deeper look into the G-Man and what happens when he loses control of the one Gordon Freeman, and what he does about it and what the consequences are. Later in the month, Gautam Babar created another piece of concept art that showed the Combine's attempts to retrieve the Borealis from the ice. 2007. In May, David Sprayer and Doug Lombardi stated in an interview that a lot of work has gone into crafting the natural progression of topography and climates between episodes 2 and 3, and that the player would not return to City 17. It was confirmed that the protagonist of episode 3 would be, in fact, Gordon Freeman in a June interview with Eurogamer. 16 months after the release of episode 1, episode 2 would be released on October 10th, 2007, double the amount of development time that was expected. Valve had commented that it was delayed to ensure quality, as well as having the ability to release on multiple platforms at once with the Orange Box. The Orange Box may be the single greatest release in video game history. It contained Half-Life 2, Episode 1, Episode 2, Team Fortress 2, and Portal. It costs $49.95 on PC and $59.95 on console. Anyways, let's get back to the timeline. In November, David Sprayer had said that they did not have Episode 2 end with a teaser for Episode 3 because they did not want to ruin the mood of the final scene, as well as not wanting to be tied down creatively, explaining that they wanted to do something pretty ambitious for the final chapter of the Freeman story. Later that month, the first concept art for the next episode was released to the public by Games Radar. This teaser seemed to contain 4 advisors floating in a crevice in the Arctic ice with the Borealis stuck within its frozen tomb. In December, it was officially stated that Episode 3 would be the last of the current story arc, but not the end of the series as a whole. This leads back to what was mentioned in the previous year about a brand new Half-Life game being developed by Gearbox, though they had their hands full with a brand new IP. Gaben had also said that the death of Eli Vance was planned a pretty long time ago in advance, and that he really is dead and could not be brought back. Yeah, sure, bud, let's see how that goes. 2008. On March 10th and 11th, Valve artist Andrea Wickland would upload 33 pieces of concept art of Episode 3 onto her Picasa account, which would only be discovered in June of 2012. If there is one thing that is true about the Half-Life fandom, it's that they're thorough. The fact that this went unseen for 4 years is crazy when you look at the depths that the fans are willing to go nowadays to find any hint of the next game. A month later in April, the source code for 3 entities were released into the Source SDK. The Source SDK is a tool that developers outside of Valve can use to create their own games using Valve's technology. A few of the games that were made with this technology are Gary's Mod, Titanfall, and the Stanley Parable. In a folder named Episode 3, there were files including a heavily armored Combine soldier with multiple shields, a scanner that shoots bolts, and a prototype weapon that was used in Episode 2 as a test weapon. Shortly after these were discovered, they were deleted. In May, Valve artist Ted Backman created concept art that illustrated Dr. Breen in a host body. This is believed to be the first instance of Brain Grub, a fascinating rabbit hole that led to an ARG by Mark Laidlaw himself. This ARG would run between 2012 and 2014, so we'll get more into that later in the video. Back to 2008. In July, the second and third pieces of concept art illustrated by Ted Backman, Jeremy Bennett, and Tristan Reedford were released. The first of these showed Gordon Freeman holding the most iconic weapon in all of gaming, the crowbar, face to face with an advisor. Doug Lombardi stated in an October interview that Episode 3 would be revealed by the end of the year, though it would take significantly more time to develop than the first 2 episodes combined. Throughout this year, there were teams working on Episode 3 and they were struggling to find ways to innovate on the gameplay, especially with their version of the source engine at the time. We would see gameplay that they were working on for the first time in the Half-Life 2 20th anniversary documentary. At this time, the team at Valve believed that the ideal release window had passed, and if they wanted to release the best version of this game, they would need to wait for a new engine to be developed for a proper follow-up to be created. 2009. The first bit of information from 2009 would come halfway through the year on June 11th. Gabe Newell and Doug Lombardi were interviewed by G4 about the recently announced Left 4 Dead 3. Naturally, the interviewer asked Gabe about Episode 3. He revealed that there were good reasons why they were not publicly discussing Episode 3 just yet, and they just couldn't talk about why. When asked if they would get any news by the end of the year, he avoided the question and instead decided to talk about the Meet the Spy video. Later on in the summer, Gabe Newell explains how Valve was experimenting with different development techniques for their future titles, including Episode 3, while also adding that he had nothing new to say about the game but that the community would be notified as soon as they have something to share. 2010. The next hint of news from Episode 3 would come in March of 2010 by Gabe Newell himself. He had hinted that the next entry in the Half-Life franchise would return to the series' psychological horror roots, and this would become true, but probably not in the way that he intended at the time. To quote Gabe, "I feel that we've gotten away from genuinely scaring the player more than I'd like, and it's something that we need to think about in addition to broadening the emotional palette that we can draw on." To translate, he says that they need to create different ways to bring emotion out of the player. We have gotten depression by the ending of Episode 2, but now they really want to bring out the emotion of fear. When he was asked what he believes scares the players the most, he states, "The death of their children, the fading of their own abilities." Anyways, let's move on to the next time Gabe mentioned the Half-Life series. In April, he explains that Gordon Freeman would say as the avatar for the player to experience the world through, wanting him to largely remain an arm and a crowbar, as well as making the companions more interesting and compelling. Honestly, I think the companions are just perfect. Just watch these clips.
I can't get this tune out of my head. Know what you mean.
I don't feel anything anymore.
Right on.
This is bullshit.
How about that?
That's like a zombine, right? Zombine, get it?
Perfection. Sometime in July, Episode 3 references were found in the Alien Swarm SDK. A few object property names that were found inside include EP3 Blob Shake Position, EP3 Fire Cover Position, and EP3 Blob Brain Cover Position. Some of these seem to be references to the blob entity seen in the early Episode 3 development footage. In an August interview, Doug Lombardi states that they hate to make the community wait for the next game in the franchise. On September 15th, PC Gamer held an interview with Gabe focusing on piracy and DRM. Of course, the interviewer asked a question about Episode 3, mentioning that on a previous visit to Valve's offices he had seen a whiteboard laying out the pros and cons between the gravity gun and an unknown weapon called the Weaponizer. It is widely believed that this is one of the unidentified weapons seen in the same footage where we see the concept for the ice gun. It uses the same model as the paint gun seen in the Portal 2 development video, likely as a placeholder. It was suggested that this is a device that will utilize concrete, liquid, and metal, which keeps in line with what is thought to be the theme of Episode 3 at the time. The Weaponizer is an item that will be referenced throughout this timeline. With all that being said, Newell and the project manager Eric Johnson denied that this was made for Episode 3, stating that this was an internal design experiment that did not go past the experimentation phase. However, over a decade later, code referencing the Weaponizer was discovered, proving that it was at least a concept made for Episode 3. Intermission. While there has been plenty of news from Valve themselves as of 2010, from now on they would try to avoid the topic of Episode 3 as much as possible, especially from its CEO and co-founder Gabe Newell. From here on out, the majority of the video will be going over different leaks and rumors coming from and around Valve, and found in the source code of other projects. But before we get to the rest of the timeline, make sure to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this video. Researching the Half-Life 3 timeline has given me a bunch of new ideas for videos, so hit that bell to get notified when those come out. 2011. Starting off this year in February, Valve writer Chet Falzik reported that Valve is not prepared to talk about Episode 3 at this moment. A terrific way to start the year and a great introduction to what the content of the rest of this video will be. In an interview in March about the future of Half-Life, Doug Lombardi ensures that they were not done with the adventures of Gordon Freeman and advises the community to hang in there. I'm not exactly sure what sort of hanging he is advising us to do. It was in May that Gabe Newell stated that Valve would be done with the episodic model. This is the first time that the community realized that the next Half-Life game would not be an Episode 3, but a full-scale Half-Life 3. Later on this month, the Portal 2 SDK was released. In its files was the code for an NPC named Combine Advisor, however it would be quickly removed in the subsequent update. There were also several choreography files labeled Magnus found in the Portal 2 VPK cache. These were named Magnus Get Going, Magnus Idle, Magnus No Point, Magnus Shakehead, and Magnus.wave. These appear to be movement files for the one and only Dr. Magnuson, if it wasn't already obvious. These files were not part of the Episode 2 file since all of Magnuson's animations are prefixed with MAG. This suggests that there were either old animations that were updated or from a different project altogether. At the 2011 Games for Change Festival in New York, Gabe gave an inspirational speech about the benefits of video games. When he had finished his speech, he had time to answer questions from the crowd. He was asked when the next Half-Life game would come out, of course. We received the ominous answer, if you know enough to ask the question, you know enough what the answer is. It is at this time that the community began to lose hope. The meaning of this answer was clear. They did not know. On August 11th and 12th, 3 Canadian fans of the series decided to hold a protest outside of Valve headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. They wanted to ask for information about Half-Life 3. In his great wisdom, Lord Gaben descended from his throne to speak with them in person. When asked when the next Half-Life game would be released, he simply answered, "I can't tell you," before taking pictures with them and heading back inside to play more TF2. Probably. With this being as monumental as it was, Kotaku asked Gaben if he had anything to say about the new game, in which he replied, "I got nothing for you." In September, a Dota 2 beta tester leaked all of the files for the game. In these files, there was code referring to a folder named HL3. This file pointed to what seems to be weapon files labeled Weapon Ice Gun, Weaponizer Concrete, Weaponizer Liquid, Weaponizer Metal, and Weapon Flamethrower. However, Chet Falzad stated that the code does not mean anything and shouldn't be taken as fact. If only we knew how right he was. On the 1st of December, a member of the Seattle-based game studio Uber Entertainment, the studio who dissolved in March 2022 after the contract for the game Kerbal Space Program 2 was cancelled. Oh, what could have been. Anyways, this dev had reported that he had seen what looks to be a Valve employee wearing a Half-Life 3 t-shirt at a local developer event. When asked if he knew anything about the long-awaited title, the Valve employee said no. Mark Laidlaw was asked if this t-shirt was real, in which he confirmed its existence but did not elaborate on the topic. Man, I wish Epistle 3 would have worked out to be the story of Half-Life 3. A week later on December 9th, an anonymous US-based voice actor had claimed that they had recorded the lines for Half-Life 2 Episode 3. This would lead to rumors that the game would be announced at this 2011 Spike Video Game Awards the next day, though I'm sure you know the ending of that story. Just before the end of the year on December 27th, the voice actor John Patrick Lurie, best known for his role as the sniper in Team Fortress 2, debunked what the anonymous voice actor had said on the 9th. He also commented on a post about his wife, the voice of Overwatch from the Half-Life series, the administrator in Team Fortress 2, and oh yeah, GLaDOS from Portal, that among other things, no Half-Life 3 stuff yet. Haven't heard anything. And Ellen and I haven't heard anything about the new Half-Life episode. 2012. 13 days into 2012, Mark Laidlaw had confirmed that there was a cancelled Half-Life 2 episode titled Return to Ravenholm. This was the working title for a spin-off developed by Arcane Studios, the creators of the Dishonored series from 2006 to 2009, with the playable character being the GOAT, Adrian Shepard. We have been given a ton of information about this cancelled project. If you guys would like to see a video about the return of Ravenholm, let me know in the comments below. On February 19th, Gabe Newell expressed in an interview how Valve understands what they have been putting the fan base through with their lack of communication. He explains that they did not want to repeat what happened with the release of Half-Life 2, meaning delaying the game after giving exact release dates. This, among other things, is the reason why Half-Life 3 is all but confirmed by Valve. They do not want to announce a date until they are certain that they have perfected their masterpiece. I believe that it will be a very similar situation to the release of Hollow Knight Silksong if the time ever comes. An interesting fact about this interview is Gabe also talks about their potential future of creating and selling hardware. I will include a link to an archive of this interview in the description below if you'd like to read the entire interview. As a part of an online interview on April 13th, Gabe explains Valve's absolute silence surrounding the upcoming Half-Life project. This reason would be because of a multitude of unexpected concept changes throughout its development. 4 years after Andrea Wickland uploaded concept art for Episode 3 onto her Picasa account, they would finally be discovered by the community on June 27th. These images would contain environmental art depicting an Arctic setting, multiple outfit redesigns for Alyx Vance, several before unseen characters, the Resistance helicopter seen at White Forest at the end of Episode 2 crashed into the ice, and a bunch of images that reimagined Zen. The day after this was discovered, her account was deleted. 2013. 2013 was a big year for Valve. However, it started out on February 18th with FGD files for Episode 3 and Stars of Blood games being leaked. Many of these files reference weapons such as the teleportation gun, flamethrower, ice gun, gluon gun, and the Tau cannon with the depleted uranium-235 ammunition that the last two weapons used in the original Half-Life game. There was also an FGD file with a ton of information about the blob entity and its behavior. Sometime around April, a team led by David Sprayer started work on a brand new project using the Source 2 engine Half-Life 3. The team had spent over a year prototyping the game, importing over 350 entities from Half-Life 2 into the new engine. The major gameplay concept that was being focused on at this time was creating a replayable experience. The game would take a level and procedurally generate a path and spawn points of different enemies, while complementing story moments that was said to likely involve the G-Man. On June 18th, a mailing list was discovered within Valve's project management software. This list included mentions of Half-Life 3, Left 4 Dead 3, and Source 2. There were 42 employees on this list, and it was known that this list had been recently updated because a new Valve employee, Paul Pepura, was on it, who had joined 3 months before the list was discovered. Later, on August 13th and 14th, John Patrick Lowry made a few posts on his blog about a discussion he had with a Valve employee about the implementation of motion capture animation, and how it was the biggest challenge with bringing out Half-Life 3, and as far as he knows, Half-Life 3 is not being worked on at this time. These posts were deleted a few days later with the explanation that John had misspoke earlier and that he would only be informed about the status of a game late into development since he was only a voice actor. Man, don't sell yourself short like that. On the first day of October, Valve's JIRA database became viewable to the public once again. This is its internal mailing list. The most notable thing that was discovered at this time is that a few employees were added to the Half-Life 3 group, while a new group called Half-Life 3 Core was created containing a few of the employees that were in the previous group, including former Valve designer Kelly Bailey and Adam Foster, among others. This was not the only event to happen on October 1st, however. There was also a likely fraudulent trademark claim under the European Union with the Half-Life 3 name. This claim was immediately unlisted. 2014. In an Ask Me Anything panel held on March 4th containing Gabe Newell, Eric Johnson, writer Eric Wolpaw, game designer Greg Coomer, and the project lead of CSGO and CS2 Ido Magal, Gabe was asked when Ricochet 2 was going to come out. If you don't know what Ricochet is, it's a game developed and released by Valve on November 1st, 2000. As described on Steam, it is a futuristic action game that challenges your agility as well as your aim. Ricochet features one-on-one and team matches played in a variety of futuristic battle arenas. I would love to tell you more about how the game plays, however I sat refreshing the servers for 10 minutes and found 0 games with people in it. Let's get back to the rest of the interview. Gabe had responded by explaining how, when Valve would announce their games years in advance, they were late on delivering them. They recognized the pain that they made the community go through and would rather not do that again. On May 15th, former Valve employee and co-creator of the Counter-Strike mod for Half-Life, Min Lee, tells us how he wouldn't doubt the idea that Valve was working on Half-Life 3, as well as stating that he had seen some concept art but he did not specify when he did see this. We finally have an update on the team who had been quietly working on Half-Life 3, and unfortunately there was 0 good news. David Sprayer's team had not made any significant progress on the project. One of the biggest reasons why it was difficult for them to progress on the game is due to the unfinished nature of Source 2, since it was also in development at the same time. This is what led to the cancellation of other internal projects such as Left 4 Dead 3 and an unnamed RPG prototype. Could this prototype game have turned into Deadlock? I know it's not really the same genre, but MOBAs and RPGs share a few core similarities such as character progression, character roles, and resource management. Anyways, this would be the last bit of news coming from 2014. It's time to move on to 2015. 2015. A single reference to HL3 was found within the Dota 2 workshop tools on February 10th. Inside a file named modeleditor.ddl, a command line was found containing physics_testbed.exe-game HL3-open. It is not known how old this line of code is. A podcast interview by Jeff Keighley was posted on March 19th. This interview would have Jeff ask Gabe whether or not the fans would ever see a proper Half-Life 3. Gabe answered by stating, "The only reason we go back and do a super classic kind of product is if a whole bunch of people just internally in Valve want to do it and had a reasonable explanation of why they did." A day before the 8th anniversary of the Orange Box, Valve released 4 help files that were used in the Source 2 version of Hammer. If you don't know what Hammer is, it is Valve's official level design tool for their games. It is something that anyone who owns a Source game also has access to. There was also a quest system being referenced at multiple points with entities such as InfoQuest Dialogue and InfoQuest Goal. There is also a variation of an NPC labeled NPC Quest Citizen, which apparently was able to become a quest member. When an NPC was given this label, it would become friendly or neutral to Combine units and would not take damage from their attacks. The majority of what was found in this leak consisted of Half-Life 2 code that had been ported to Source 2 by Sprayer's team in 2013 in their effort to evolve its gameplay. This included base AI functions such as companions, squad following, and many other features. 2016. 2017. On January 17th, Gabe conducted an Ask Me Anything poll on Reddit in which he explicitly stated that he had no information to offer about the future of the Half-Life series. He says that he personally looked at the franchise as a series of regrets, while also saying that it was possible for a new IP to take place in the Half-Life and Portal universe. Half a year later, on July 17th, an interview with Arcade Attack was released. This interview involved the now former writer Mark Laidlaw, who had retired from Valve the previous year. Mark talked about how he had ideas for the story of Episode 3 that would tie up loose ends and resolve plot threads that were relevant to Half-Life 2. He considered Episode 3 and Half-Life 3 to be completely different entities, which makes sense. Episode 3 would have taken between 4 to 6 hours to complete, where a full-scale game would be at least double that. A month later, Mark would upload a short story to his website with the name Episode 3. This would be an outline of a story that would follow the events of Episode 3 with code names and gender swaps of the actual Half-Life 2 characters and elements. Mark had referred to the story as a fan fiction and a snapshot of a dream he had many years ago. The story was removed from his website around May of 2022. 2018. 2019. Half-Life Alyx would be announced as Valve's first VR game on November 18th. 2020. Half-Life Alyx would be released on March 23rd of 2020. The only aspect of this game that applies to this video is its ending. Spoilers ahead. The ending of Alyx would completely change the universe of Half-Life. Alyx would free the G-Man from the Combine prison, thinking that she would be saving Gordon Freeman. The G-Man would offer Alyx the chance to save her father in the future, which she does. In exchange for this, the G-Man hires Alyx and puts her into stasis, awaiting an assignment. The beginning of Half-Life 3 would likely directly follow the events of this ending. On July 9th, a documentary named The Final Hours of Half-Life Alyx would be released. This would reveal several internal projects that took place within the Half-Life franchise. 2 of these would be VR projects that were codenamed Shooter and Borealis. 2021. 2022. On August 28, 2022, unseen pieces of post-Episode 2 concept art were released to the public. These are assumed to not only be from Episode 3/Half-Life 3, but also an unknown cancelled game that would follow Alyx and Dog that would be separate from the episodes. I do wonder what this could have been. I would love a buddy comedy revolving around Alyx and Dog solving crimes within City 17. There were 4 pieces of concept art that were released for this game. These environments would show unknown mountainous and rocky locations. 2023. 2024, the Half-Life 2 20th anniversary documentary, released on November 15th, would give us the most amount of information about Half-Life 3 that we have gotten in 15 years. I have been talking about this throughout this video, and I plan on making a video going over what is shown in this documentary sometime. 2025. On February 18th, the Source SDK was updated to include the new Half-Life 2 SDK. In this update, a folder under the Half-Life 2 episodes game directory was found and named Half-Life 3. This includes the same NPC Combine Armored, NPC Weapon Scanner, and Weapon Proto 1 that had been seen in the April 2008 leak. This is currently the end of the Half-Life 3 timeline. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you know of any other rumors or leaks, make sure to leave them in the comments below and I will make a pinned comment containing all of them. See ya.